Neal, what's up, man? How are you? How's it going?
Hey, Mark, thanks so much for having me. This chat is a long time coming. Love what you're doing at Bread Loaf. I love everything you've done over the course of your career. Been following it for a long time, so great to chat.
And same here. Like, really respect you and everything that you've done, and I'm really excited to get to connect today. So this is exciting for me as well. So let's start off. Like when we start these conversations, I always like to say, like, what are you doing right now? Like, tell me what are you doing in ecom? And obviously, you've got a great role at Tapcart, but tell me short little story, like where are you at right now in your career?
I feel like I have one of the greatest jobs in the world. And when I say jobs, I'm talking not about the company, not talking about the role. I'm talking about the environment and community that I have the opportunity to work in every day. So when you get to work hand in hand with Shopify merchants, you're talking about individuals that have built brands on their backs from their basements through pure grit, hustle, tenacity, and pure will. And being surrounded by those people every single day and communicating with those kind of individuals every day is like one of the most motivating things about what we do. So you're surrounded in that same environment too. I imagine you find it like a whole ton of fun. And when you think about these stories, they're really inspiring. Get to sit in front of across from them. That's like makes it the greatest job in the world, in my view. So I think as it pertains to what I do right now, I'm director of sales at Tapcart. I have the opportunity to work with some incredible brands that are focused on taking their brands to the next level through improved retention and customer experience. And I get this incredible bird's eye view of what brands are doing right now, what's working, what's not working, and it just makes it a dream job.
I couldn't agree with you more. I tell like my whole team and every client I work with, the thing that gives me more energy, me the most energy on a daily basis is the same exact thing that you just said. It's literally seeing merchants and brands like brand founders like lives change through the businesses they're building. And like seeing top line revenue benchmark days. Bet like we had a client, one of our clients that we started working with a couple months ago, they beat their Black Friday, Cyber Monday, best day ever from this past year. From this past year, they beat it on the first day of Prime Day this year, and we ran the
Wow.
Prime Day offer directly through their e-commerce site. Best day ever in revenue, and I'm just like so ecstatic because I'm like I can't wait to see what we do in Q4 this year. So I 100% agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, when you think about the small roles that each one of us might play in helping support a brand, you think about it's really tough to play a role with an IBM or an SAP and try to like do something that's going to really move the needle for a company like that, right? When you think of brands, whether they're a $1 million brand, a $20 million brand, or even a $100 million plus brand, all of them are experiencing very similar challenges across the spectrum. And every single partner, tech partner, agency partner is actually able to have a pretty monumental impact. So I think it's the impact you can drive in your role that equally gives that level of fulfillment too.
Yeah, it's when you can have that big of an impact on the top line and the bottom line when it comes to driving revenue and optimizing and installing more tech and building another revenue channel, it makes it really exciting. Versus you said working with a massive company where you're on one small part of it, you're working with one small part of an org that really is not going to have an impact on where it goes overall. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, before and let's just get into your background a little. Like, what were you doing before Tapcart?
Yeah, so I've been in the mobile app space for about 6 years now, but even prior to getting into the mobile app space, it was my wife and I had started a brand on Shopify. We were kind of like at a place where we were just starting from nothing. And this is back in the days of like, hey, Shopify was just like a new thing, and Instagram was just acquired by Facebook, like those days, right? And we realized like, oh my goodness, like building a brand is not only fun, but we're able to do it from our living room. We had a tremendous amount of success in year one, and then we had a tremendous amount of challenges that came immediately after that. And that was what made me fall in love with the concept of just D2C and realizing what Shopify did to lower the barriers to entry to allow anybody, including someone like myself, to be able to go launch a brand virtually overnight. And then, that was my like initial like step into the world of ecom and D2C, was just having started a brand ourselves. Then it evolved into, okay, this was great. We had some challenges. We had a lot of learnings over the course of that journey. And now I've transitioned to a role where I support all of those brands. So I get to consult with each one of those brands, guide them, provide insight, and learn from them as much as they might be learning from me. And so that's what my whole role has been about. So I have the opportunity to work with some of the coolest brands on the planet, the largest brands on Shopify right now, and it's pretty crazy what brands have had to navigate over the last, like, let's call it 6 years, the ultimate roller coaster. And, seeing how there is a small pack of brands that have really made it out to the end and are now at a place of stability and now can actually talk about growth. Like, that's pretty incredible to see what they weathered. So that's kind of been my foray into ecom. It started on the brand side specifically, eventually came to Tapcart a few years ago, where I fell in love with all things mobile. I was in mobile apps prior to that, but not just ecom. It was mobile apps, everything. But it was the love for Shopify combined with the mobile commerce aspect that I already had experience with. And so that's where Tapcart became that new home. And that now it feels like forever ago when that happened. But in terms of how that's evolved today, now it's like Tapcart has scaled in such a monumental way since that time. So it's been really awesome to be a part of this ride, but more importantly, a ride that's supported so many other merchants in winning.
It's so funny. We've had a lot of the same career path because I actually was in the same thing. Like I got into e-commerce because I started my first wine business in 2010 out of college. And I did the same. Like I was grinding it, moonlighting, running my wine business at the same time, working as a producer in the ad world. And it was such a grind to do both. And I learned so much. And we struggled a lot. We would have some months we'd make money, some months we lose money. Wine is like one of the hardest things to sell on the internet because there's so much compliance around every single state, every, shipping wine, packaging wine, storing wine. It was such a grind, but I'm so happy I did it and ran that for 5 years. And at the same time, worked for ad agencies the whole time. And then in 2016, started Bread Loaf. So yeah, yeah, it's wild, but it's interesting how we both went on that same path. Yeah, that's cool.
Love that. I
Nice.
think a lot of the work you've done at Bread Loaf too really stands out and has been kind of a unification of all of those experiences you have. I've watched what the work you've done here. A lot of people at Tapcart are also talking about the amazing work that you've done. So, it's just really awesome to see how far you've come and the journey that you've been on as well.
Oh, thanks, Neil. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think we joined the Tapcart Partner Program in 2021.
Yeah, OG
I want to say
days.
it was 2020, like at the end, I got introduced to Cena, I think at the end of 2020, and we joined at the beginning of 2021. And it's been awesome. Like we preach it left and right. We've got multiple clients on the Tapcart ecosystem, and it's literally become part of our, it's funny. Right before this, I actually just recorded uh, a new video sales letter VSL for our cold outbound system. And it's like, here's the four channels we work on. It's email, SMS, push, and direct mail. And it's like through that's become the system and the formula that that's worked for us. And obviously we started with, we've been running email since 2016. Then in 2017, 2018, we started working with Retention Rocket before all the SMS platforms were even around, and then partnered with Attentive, Postscript, and obviously with you guys. And it's been an incredible incredible addition to our retention program, being able to syndicate the same messaging across multiple channels. It's just unreal. And our framework now that's been working really well is, for new product launches and especially for special offers, like we'll use direct mail as a hype piece. So let's say for instance, we just ran 4th of July promos, 4th of July sales a couple weeks ago. We did direct mail pieces that hit someone's physical inbox on like the 26th through the 28th, with sales launching on the 1st through the 2nd. And then when that sale launched, email, SMS, push consistently through the sale, through the end of it. And it's unbelievable how those four channels all together, having first party data makes a hell of a difference in working this omni-channel approach.
You
Yeah.
know, the crazy part is that your logic right there seems so sound and seems so straightforward, but believe it or not, it's like the minority. I think we have retention marketers right now that are still looking at each individual channel in a very singular way, and one dimensionally and almost siloed, and that definitely needs to change. And then they're also having the conversation of acquisition and retention, two separate conversations in and of themselves, two separate departments that have no conversations with each other. When the reality is those things are working in tandem with one another. You can't have one or the other. It's not email or SMS. It's not top or bottom. It's
Yeah.
just a function of this
It's
holistic.
everything in synergy
A
together.
thousand
Yeah.
percent, 1,000%.
Yeah. Yeah. We run into that conversation all the time. And, you know, especially when we're trying, my whole goal is to get every one of our clients on a Tapcart. Is to get every one of my clients doing direct mail, because I know just, if you're spending 30, 50, 100K, a half a million a month on ads, right? Spending just a little bit, or even spending 5, 10 grand a month on SMS fees. I'm like, take a little piece of that budget, build another channel. And this is also the time to do it. We're telling all of our clients like July, August, September, October, we're in list growing season. It's time to get multi-channel. It's time to launch an app. We're actually getting ready to launch an app for our client Pebi Forevi. The only reason we haven't launched yet is they're stuck on some internal approvals, but we're hoping to get that launched over the next week or two. And I'm just telling our client, I'm like, listen, this is going to generate an additional 10% of your monthly revenue when we ramp it up over the next 3 months.
Hey,
And the reason it's going to do that is you're already launching. Like this one client we have, fashion client, which, everyone's like, fashion, it's so hard to sell. I'm like, I love fashion because we can just launch stuff all the time. Like I'd be like, if I get a client that can launch stuff 1 or 2 times a week, I'm like, this is a gold mine. We'll make money all day every day, because there's always something fun, and fashion's never finished, right? It's like, it's art. It's never done. People will always need more clothes. It's not just a representation of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of needing like clothing to wear to keep yourself protected, but it's a representation of who you are, and that's ever evolving and changing, and it's never finished. So for us, like, fashion brands, apparel brands are just a gold mine, because we can make money with it all day as long as our clients continue to produce a great product. So when it comes to something fresh, when we can do restocks, new launches, and create really great offers, that gives me, a couple of opportunities a week to send a push notification along with everything that we're doing on the retention side. And then not only that, but, what's becoming really great is running in-app flash sales and just pre-promoting app downloads through email and SMS, and then running exclusive in-app only happy hours for a certain amount of hours a day to launch, special offers on certain things, and it makes it fun.
you
Yeah.
know, uh, I know you're incredibly good at what you do, but if all else fails, I promise you have a spot on the Tapcart sales team. So that's
Awesome. I
spot on.
appreciate
Like that's
that.
spot on. So just keep that in
Yeah.
mind. Hope it never happens,
No, I
but
appreciate
at the
that.
end of the day,
Thanks, Neil.
yeah,
Yeah, we're really stoked with, like I said, we value the partnership that we have with you guys so high. We enjoy the platform, and any opportunity we have to talk with the client about it, I say it's a no brainer. You should have a Tapcard app, 100%. But with that being said, like, tell me about, what are some of your favorite clients that you guys are working with right now at Tapcart?
the story has really evolved over over what brands are most successful with an app and whatnot. I think it's been an evolution, and I think oftentimes we think about, what are some of the coolest brands, most exciting brands, what categories are performing the best, and we think about it in that lens, when the reality is the brands that are doing the best and are most exciting at Tapcart is actually evolving based on what the overall D2C climate has weathered over the last like 5 to 6 years. So as I mentioned before, like brands have gone through this incredible roller coaster. And in my view, the D2C experienced almost a repeat of what the 2008 financial crisis brought, right? The
Yeah.
2008 financial crisis was the end of a reckless era of financial responsibility, lending, borrowing, that eventually came to a grinding halt when access to capital froze. And all those who relied on that capital and bet on future growth in the form of real estate and lending came to a grinding halt. And there was this huge awakening that took place. And so, why am I bringing that here and talking about brands that are most exciting are the ones that also have navigated that whole cycle where we went into this D2C type of bubble type of environment where Shopify started by, creating the barrier to entry that was almost non-existent. A brand could be set up overnight. So that was really awesome, really exciting. But then all of a sudden, 2017, 2018, Facebook becomes a little bit of a money printer, right? So you could just throw like a couple of dollars out there, it come back as like $10 or $15, and then it just became like really easy. Oh, Instagram social was like the best performing channel
Yeah, you could
organically.
spend
Yeah,
you could start with a $30 to $50 a day ad budget and be making two, 300, $500 a day.
exactly.
And it's crazy times to think about that. You could say, I I either drop ship in a product that you don't actually own, or you buy a couple $1,000s worth of inventory, and you could run as little as 20, 30, $40 a day and actually get a multiple
Yep.
on it. Now, that's virtually impossible if you don't already have an established brand, and you're not going to get much momentum to even season a pixel and get an ad set out of learning
So
to make it worthwhile.
exactly. And so
But
when you think about the 2017, 2018, and early 2019, that's what it was. And actual brand building kind of took a backseat because we were so focused on click and conversion because of what Facebook taught us to do, right? Take that easiest path or path of least existence to drive that revenue, right? So then all of a sudden now you're kind of in this like things are super easy, but then all of a sudden you create this period called COVID that creates this artificial spike in consumer demand. Demand for products was higher than ever. Brands are opening up overnight. Everybody and their mother and their pet monkey were able to set up an app or set up a brand overnight, right? And they were making money and everyone was doing really well. Still, because ads were cheap, access to capital was high, get government was giving free money to both consumers to spend it and to businesses
yeah,
to
and
to
into
go
companies.
pour it back into Facebook ads, right? So it was a self-fulfilling prophecy to the point where it all came to a grinding halt in third quarter of 2021, where two things happened. Number one, obviously iOS 14 completely changed the name of the game, and then number two, the reopening started taking place. So everyone was all of a sudden shocked that, wait a second, this artificially inflated period of created demand and free access to capital and lower CAC is like this is not a permanent thing for us. Like this is not going to last forever, right? It was this like very rude awakening that all came into the picture. So why is this relevant to the most exciting brands? Are the ones that were able to be like, yeah, we got caught up, but yes, we adapted. Yes, we were able to come through onto the other side. And so for me, the most exciting brands maybe a couple of years ago were the ones that were like, hey, we built this brand from zero to $50 million and we did it by this. That story is so much harder to make happen now in this higher CAC economy. And so when you think about what is going to be the single like most exciting brand to work with, is someone that says, hey, we know we're working, we're growing in a rising CAC environment. This is what we're doing. It's like business fundamentals. It's business 101. It's like actual eyes on profitability. And so the brands that are looking under the hood of profitability and are concerned about prudent growth, not just growth at all costs, those are the ones I'm most excited about, right? Those are the conversations that we're
I
having.
couldn't you agree
Yeah.
more. Yeah. Yeah, and ones that are looking on a longer term horizon than trying to trying to exponentially grow so fast where those things that time has that ship has sailed. It's not coming back. And I also think one thing that you said was quite interesting, which is you know companies that have grown over the last, let's call it 6, 7, 8, 10 years, they didn't have to, they were investing purely into direct response, and brand wasn't really necessary. And brand is expensive at the end of the
Yep.
day, but ads were cheap, so people could get away with it, right? I remember when I worked with brands where we used to use, like, I worked with a golf brand, subscription golf box brand years ago, when I was at Stealth Venture Labs before I started Bread Loaf, and we would run stock images of golfers from Shutterstock to run ads for a golf subscription lifestyle box. That simple. Like, and it worked all day, every day. It's crazy. Now, if you don't have great creative, if you're not actually telling storytelling that shows your brand ethos and values, and also shows the functionality of your product and how people are using it, it's very challenging to actually get those hero ads to make ads work and to drive the direct response side of things.
Like that's a behavior that's learned over time though, right? This direct
Totally.
response, right? It's a
100%.
behavior that we're taught or we teach ourselves. Facebook was really great in teaching us those things. Um, and then when you say brand building is expensive, yeah, it's because expensive meaning it's the long game. It's like it you don't see that immediate results right away. You see it over the long haul. So the brands that have done that really well are the ones that are surviving today. The ones that are like, hey, listen, I'm not just going to rely on a bunch of tools and tech to get me there. Yes, those are all going to play a role, but ultimately I'm focused on business 101, and business 101 is not just the top line, it's the bottom line. The bottom line means you got to actually take the long game in the approach instead of looking click to conversion and being so obsessed with that, right? So for me, it feels like a case study, almost like a history book that has continued to repeat itself over and over again. .com era, same story. Financial crisis, same story. And then D2C, obviously nowhere near as cataclysmic to the economy as those two previous eras, but it's a very similar path up and a very similar path down, and a very similar story and characteristics of the companies that made it out to the other side, right? .com, Amazon made it out to the other side in this new world that we're in. In the post-financial crisis, we see all of the banks that survived and new future world of lenders that are actually doing really, really well right now. And same thing D2C. You're seeing these brands that are just like doing really well right now, but it's the right kind of growth that's truly sustainable.
You nailed it. And I think the brands that make it out are the ones that deserve to make it out. Because when I look at the landscape right now, and it just comes down to the landscape. Doesn't matter if you're at the PE level, like your VF, or if you're just a small, 2 to $5 million a year brand. Everyone's struggling with debt and access to capital. Like, I just wrote an article on LinkedIn last week that was talking about VF sold
Yeah.
Supreme, and they purely sold it because they had a shitload of debt on their books, and they're a private equity group. VF is nothing more than a PE group that owns a bunch of fashion apparel and outdoor brands.
And you
What
know
do they
what the
have to
most
do?
interesting
Yeah,
part of that divestiture was? Okay, yes, the top line was that it was sold at a discount from where it was acquired. Okay, but more importantly, Supreme was one of the highest performing assets in their portfolio. If you think about it, Supreme was one of the few brands that are on Shopify, right? So they had already taken the move, in order to lower cost of ownership, right?
totally.
Supreme has a relatively lean team, relatively speaking, revenues to team.
Yeah, they're doing a half a billion a year to the size of their
Okay, and
team.
then
Yeah,
look
it's
look at
it's
their
it's
look at
lean. Yeah.
Supreme's performance marketing spend, which is pennies compared to any of the other brands in their portfolio. So why would they divest that asset? To me, that was the most puzzling piece, right? It was really interesting to see that. And I think it comes down to VF understanding where, in order to preserve some of the other brands that are like mission critical brands like the North Face of the world, like they need to devote all of their attention there. And therefore,
Totally.
let's extract value. But that's a story as we're kind of rounding this trough in D2C. Is this is a scenario where a parent company had to divest out of one of their highest performing assets. Whereas typically when you think of a divestiture, you think of it, hey, let's spin out some of our lower performing assets because another buyer might be able to extract more value out of it. This is one of their highest performing assets, which is why it was so puzzling to me.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and it's interesting to see how, they ended up selling to Luxottica, which is not in the fashion space. I mean, they're in the accessory space, right? But obviously it'll be interesting to see if, Luxottica's main objective over the next 5, 10, 15 years is to get more into fashion than just eyewear overall. I mean, they have the distribution, the brick and mortar and the brands to get into it as well. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, where do you see things going through the end of the year? Like, we're about halfway through the year now. We're in Q3. Where do you see ecom going through the end of Q3 and Q4 of 2024?
Well, as we look in 2024, I feel like right now we are in what I would call a D2C bottom. Okay. D2C bottom in the sense that we've had that crash from the top. That period of euphoria is behind us. The period of unrealistic expectations is behind us. And 2024 is the first year in many where we've seen like true prudence in the way brands are navigating. Yes, that means they're cutting their tech stacks over the course of that journey. Yes, that means they're looking at every single dollar spent with a fine tooth comb. Yes, that means the CFOs are making the decisions, not the CMOs, right? Um, and ultimately, where do I see 2024? It's the bottom. It's the realization of the way we need to do business in order to be truly sustainable. And so the way we're running business and our expectations in line with all of the past artificial demand behind us is where I see, okay, it's nowhere to go but up from here, right? So I am extremely bullish on D2C. I think what we're seeing though is a trickle down effect as well to the software players too. So you'll see almost every single software company that supports these brands are smaller in headcount than where they were 12 months ago. So I think there was definitely an awakening in the software space that when they supported these brands as they're going through their new level of definition of prudence. And so here we're going to see a tailwind effect in the back half of the year. I know as we come into this year, I think it's going to be a big BFCM for brands. I think it's going to be absolutely huge. I think number one thing I see as a repeat offender or repeat challenge is year after year brands see such a huge spike in Q4 revenue only to see 90-95% of those customers never really come back, right? So not only do they acquire that customer at the absolute highest possible cost during that peak period, but they never became profitable in that customer in the first place. And so they looked at the BFCM as a one-time revenue event when the reality is if you take that holistic approach like you do very much at Bread Loaf is hey, retention begins at the moment of acquisition and looking at it a truly holistic view in a package deal. Those are the brands that see that returning revenue coming into effect through later parts of Q4, early Q1, Q2. And so I think we're going to see large top line come in. The question is, how prudent are brands in building customer experiences, going back to that long game approach of building a relationship with the customer, actual old school brand building during this one time revenue event. And I think that's going to be the story at the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's obviously that's a big event of the year right now and everyone's banking on it. Another thing I wanted to bring up too, just talking about Q4, like I was having a conversation with one of our private equity partners that we work with. They send us some deals and we send them deals too. And we were talking about all of these, buzzword of the moment right now, these brands that are essentially zombie brands in the market.
Yeah.
that have
Yeah.
like flatline growth, and their founders are exhausted, right? They might be doing 1 million to 5, 10 million a year, but they've just kind of flatlined, and it's the same old thing, and they're just working to stay alive. What do you think is going to happen with all these zombie brands in the market? Do you think they're going to get gobbled up? You think they're going to get acquired? They're going to just die out? Like, where do you see these brands? And do you think that there's an acquisition opportunity for other brands to be taking these assets and brands and rolling them into what they're already doing?
The zombie effect is real. In fact, if you look at, again, we'll come back to the 2008 financial crisis here, where even after the bubble burst, you had banks that outright failed in loud, loud fashion. Those are the ones you all heard of. But the ones that no one talked about was the 500 plus zombie banks, is how they were described. In other words, they're still in existence. They're just kind of going about the ways, living quarter to quarter, month to month, and just making it and just keeping the lights on, right? And when did we actually see a true bottom in the economy? Is when those zombie banks also that were still being artificially propped up, right, eventually go away, right? Now, here we see is if we take that same analogy, we have a whole lot of brands that outright failed in like epic fashion. Those are the ones that might have like been like pre-IPO and whatnot. Those are all the ones you heard about. But now, out of maybe like the 4 million brands where Shopify got to a point where it's 4 million brands, I would say there's about a million of those. About 25% of those are kind of in this zombie status, right? Zombie status, which means there's they're still producing revenue. They haven't found a way to offset the rising customer acquisition costs. They're still living like hoping in that the next month or next quarter is going to bring something different in the Facebook algorithm. They're still doing business the same way they did maybe a year ago or a year before that. So they haven't really adapted. But number one challenge, what makes us different than a bank, is that this is our livelihood. I'm a founder. This is my blood, sweat, and tears I put into this thing. So there's an emotional investment into these brands that is causing this zombie effect, right? Um, Whereas you'll see,
There's ego associated with, just like anything in life, like people don't make the right decisions when sometimes you should just kill it before it becomes more of a liability
yeah.
than it's
So
worth.
I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting that like it go that extreme route and outright kill it per se. I'm saying that there's probably going to be some pretty aggressive consolidation in the space. There's going to be sales that taking place that are not necessarily at like premiums per se, but allowing the founders just to walk away with something. But I think that needs to happen. That really, really needs to happen because there is a lot of opportunity for brands that have built like a lot of solid community around them and some really solid products and deliver some really amazing experiences, but they just haven't become capital efficient enough in order to sustain themselves and grow from here, right? And so those founders will be looking for an out. The only problem is where does all that consolidation energy come from? And there's not exactly this wave and lineup of groups that are looking to swipe up these brands with this volume, right? So that's the hard part,
Yeah.
right?
No, I completely agree. And a lot of these aggregators and micro PE firms out there struggling just like everyone else to raise capital right now and keep these brands alive, because it's hard enough just running one brand. You try to run three or four or five or 10 or 15 or 20. Now, that is a hell of a lot of work. And you can't rob Peter to pay Paul when it comes to getting POs for new inventory and ads and tech and whatever else you need, payroll, to actually run the whole show there. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think everyone's getting squeezed with cash right now. Everyone's in a cash crunch. It's not cheap to run these types of companies. You need capital to grow. Ads, people, inventory, you know. So it'll be interesting to just see how the next, 6 to 8 months play out. And obviously too, the whole, micro financial climate with rates too, how a drop in rates will actually open up access to more capital, because right now if you're a founder and you need to borrow, multiple six figures to finance your next round of inventory, how do you justify that at a 10%,
It's wild.
12% rate, of a personal
It's
loan?
wild. And
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think um, we have to have this awakening that takes place. I think the loudest part of that has already happened. The only problem is I think it's going to take another 24 months or so at least to really unwind those, right? So that brings you back to like the agencies and the techs, the tech providers. That just basically means for both those segments, there's a much more limited total addressable market that you can go after brands because you have what used to be this group of let's call it 20,000 brands you wanted to go after is now been shrunk down to about 5,000 brands that every single agency, every single tech vendor is all trying to break into, largely
Yeah.
because so many of these brands have kind of struggled to weather the storm, right? But those that do break into the, some of those top 1,000, 2,000 are realizing that these brands are now running with like a very high level of prudence, right? So when you land these customers, whether an agency or tech vendor, you're noticing that these customers are coming in from a really strong place. They have a very clear understanding of their initiatives. They're not trying to do too much at one time. They're being very prudent with every dollar they spend. They're trying to extract the most out of the solution. You extract more of the solution, they stay forever because they get the most value out of the solution. And so we're noticing a much healthier effect taking place in terms of those that are the agencies that brands are, or the brands that agencies are landing, as well as the brands that tech vendors are landing as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I feel like a lot of brands that are getting through it, they know exactly what their North Star is. Like they know what the reality is of their situation. I've got access to this much cash. This is what I want to grow to. This is what I need, and this is what I can afford. Versus, blue ocean. Let's see how far we can sail before we run out of energy and time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 2000, the start of 2023. Okay, we have this really big agency network, right? And we have this bird's eye view of everything that's happening with every agency and whatnot. Like we know what who their clients are and whatnot. And something happened in January 2023. Every agency got fired from every client. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit,
No,
but
but
at the same time,
you're right. It did happen.
it
Yeah.
was just like this big firing cycle. And what brands were doing, this is what brands were doing. They were like, "Hey, our conversion rates are down. Agency, it's your fault. Our revenue is down. Agency, it's your fault. Our campaigns are not performing like they once did. Agency, it's your fault. Inflation happened. Agency, it's your fault. Um, the consumer got tighter with their wallet.
Yeah.
Agency, it's your fault.
Consumer confidence is down. Yeah. Yeah.
Agency got blamed for literally everything because there had to be a scapegoat. But you know what it was? It was the brand's lack of realization that that's the brand that was not living in a world of reality. That is the brand that was not, that was born in the bubble of 2020, right?
Yeah.
That shortcut to success, Facebook ads, spray money and pray money, and it's all coming back our way, right? Are the same brands that once said, brand, you're fired because inflation is out of control, right? Brand, you're fired because no, it's not the brand that's conversion rates are dropping. We just spent more money on paid ads. So that seems like it would make sense the conversion rates to drop a little bit. But like logically, no one was thinking about business fundamentals at that point, right? They hadn't come to, yes, it was 2023, but like they hadn't come to the awakening that like post iOS 14 is our new normal, post COVID reopening is our new normal. All these things that happening on the economy are the new normal, and agencies are the ones that got blamed for it, right? So it's quite wild. So when you think of that, where brands, how brands are thinking today, it's a much different picture, right? You're seeing the quality of your customers, I imagine, at Bread Loaf, much higher quality in terms of their thought process.
Yeah.
Not quality of brands. You, no matter what, they're all cool brands, right? But in terms of the clarity of the thought process and the prudence in which they're operating and the expectations that they have from you as their
Yeah,
partner.
expectations have changed a lot. Yeah, and it's honestly too like the clients that we've had that their expectations were just like unrealistic. Like every once in a while, we get that new client, we're excited to work with them, and then the next 60 days are absolute hell. And the only reason it's hell is because the expectations of that client are very very needy and need a lot. And yeah, it can be challenging. But I'm so grateful right now with the clients that we have at Bread Loaf. Like we actually have, like, one of our clients is actually our first client. It's actually
Well,
a it's a Tapcart client too that we built an app for them back in 2021. Our client Plain Tags, they've been our client since May 2016. They were one of the first clients we closed, still with us. So it's great to get to work with people long term. Like I hate when it's a 3 to 6 month engagement and someone wants to move forward or do something different. I love working with people for years. I'm sure you can say the
thousand
same.
percent, 1000%. I
Yeah,
think, um, if you're looking for 3 to 6 month engagement, that's not really the partner view, right? Partner view,
yeah, that's someone looking for a Hail
looking for a Hail
Mary,
Mary, a
and
quick
they're
fix, a quick
yeah,
pick me up, a shot of caffeine, whatever you want to call it. Um, but like at the end of the day, I think we've gotten to a place where those expectations are largely been managed, self-managed, right? And I think the same thing happened with tech. There was unrealistic expectations of what tech could solve, right? And that led to a very large period of churn for almost every single software company in the Shopify ecosystem in 2023. Churn was a problem in 2023, largely because, hey, I have this problem. Inflation's happening. Let me launch this new tech tool. Maybe that'll solve it. No, go watch your bottom line and understand what you need to do to combat inflation, right? Oh, my conversions are dropping. Okay, maybe I need to launch a tool that's going to help with my CRO. Maybe, maybe not. But it's like there was this mentality. Oh, every little piece of fast tech can solve my problem, and that's not the reality, right? There's a pretty core piece of the tech stack that you would need, and it falls into a pretty narrow scope. But the reality is there's 10,000 plus software companies in the Shopify ecosystem, right? It's quite wild. So that too also experienced its own level of bubble. 4 million brands come up overnight, and a bunch of software companies come overnight. Now with AI, many more are being built even faster, right? They're building themselves with AI. So like the speed at which that's happening is creating that bubble type effect, or did create this bubble type effect in the tech space too. And there was the unwind in 2023 where that realistic that reality met the missed expectation, came to a head. And so now any partner that is being onboarded into a software company right now knows that that brand is taking a much more like fine look at their balance sheet, fine look at whether or not they can actually allocate the spend there, and therefore it's a much more prudent decision and a much more fruitful partnership in that process.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Well, I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you one more question. With everything that's happening at Tapcart right now, partnerships, new tools that you guys are investing into in the back end, what are you most excited about with the platform right now, either that you guys have in the roadmap or that you've recently released? And what do you think is what do you think is really useful about that, and how can other brands leverage it?
So one of the things that I'm most excited about is less about the features, the functionality, and all the cool things that we're deploying. There's a ton of them. It's just wild, right? And our tech partner ecosystem is just more robust than ever by virtue of custom blocks and opening up our developer tools to the entire tech ecosystem to build whatever they want, right? It basically opened the floodgates to what could be done,
Yeah, we love
right?
custom blocks. It's been a game changer. Yeah.
At the same time, I think what's the most exciting is what we're specifically solving. So Tapcart has been in this unique tailwind that comes into different parts of the challenges in the D2C economy that have happened, right? So iOS 14 happened. That's where, okay, owned media, owned channels became a big topic. Tapcart falls into that conversation. Then iOS 15 happened, hitting email campaigns. So if email is struggling, what are some other channels that continue to be strong? Then iOS 16 impacts SMS campaigns. So what are those other channels? Email got hit, SMS next. What's next? Push, right? iOS 17 comes and all of a sudden tracking elements are being removed. What is that a tailwind? Own media channels once again, right? So this has been it's a unique where Tapcart falls into this kind of retention proofing, or sorry, recession proofing tailwind. Um, And so that's been really exciting. So what's most exciting is the fact that what we're solving right now, brands are suffering and trying to combat rising customer acquisition costs at the most aggressive and fierce rate on record. That's what's keeping brand founders up at night, CMOs getting fired by their CFOs because they can't keep a lid on customer acquisition costs. Every single brand we're onboarding, we're able to help them reduce their customer acquisition costs by virtue of every customer coming into that funnel, downloading the app, and therefore spending more over the course of the time with the brand, therefore making them more profitable and allowing them to continue to be aggressive by pouring that excess cash flow into the top of the funnel back again. That is what's most exciting here. That's the part where every single brand's coming in with trying to solve this literally the exact same problem. It's the same conversation that we're having, and that's the clear trend right here. The fact that we're seeing that happen and within the first 90 days of launch is what gets us so incredibly excited over here.
Yeah, I think that's cool as a company for you guys too, because when you realize, hey, this is exactly who our customer is, and they're all coming to us to solve the same problem. It can become very easy to actually understand, like, how do we service them and what's important to them. So, yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, Neal, thanks so much for coming on today. It was great getting to chat with you. I know we started talking about push and marketing in general, but it went into a lot of finance and some bigger conversations. So it was great having you on, and I'm really excited to get this published. And yeah,
Mark, thanks so much for having me. I mean, I've been following your journey, as I mentioned, for a really long time, and I'm so glad we were able to get together and do this, and really pumped for the partnership to come.
awesome. And if anyone's interested in getting connected with you or signing up with Tapcart, where can they reach out?
You know, you can find me on LinkedIn all day,
Awesome.
every day.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'll put your LinkedIn in the show notes to this, so it'll be really easy for anyone to get to. And we'll also have a link to Tapcart's site where if they want to, schedule a call with someone on your team to start the process, it'll be easy. So,
amazing.
thanks, Neal. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Mark. Have a good day.
See ya.